Hi, this is your host, Laura Powers, and I'm so pleased today to be here with Drew Danzeisen, and he is a storyteller, and we're going to talk about NFTs and his history with NFTs, and specifically in the collectibles space. And we are recording live here in Las Vegas. We actually met at a crypto meetup here in Las Vegas, which is brand new, just started in partnership with UNLV. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Laura, thank you for having me. This is so awesome, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Been looking forward to this interview and just keep telling stories. Keep telling my story and tell other people's story. It's just been a fun thing to do. So
awesome. I love it. And we have something else in common besides our love of NFTs, which we both lived in China and specifically in Shanghai.
Yep.
So that's unusual. What brought you to Shanghai?
So I studied out in Shanghai in 2017, and I was going to San Diego State, and my degree was international business with Chinese. So I did all the steps to get there, and my last step was to study abroad. So I went out there in August of 17 and just went full blast into it, living out there in Shanghai, going to Huashida is what it's called, or in long terms, Huadong Shifan Dashui is the university out there. So I studied there and just had an amazing experience living there in Shanghai, and it's also cool to hear from other people that have been there, because just share that experience and just to chit-chat about that. So.
Yeah, it's a very unique experience, and I would like to go back because I was there in 2010, which even in the year that I was there, it was amazing how much change happened in 1 year. Like I'd walk by, I'm like, wow, there's a brand new entire giant skyscraper that wasn't there.
The second tallest building in the world, that's now there.
Yeah, and even then I was struck with how modern everything was in terms of technology. They were always so far ahead of where we were, which is, I think that's not the stereotype. Like, I think most people, when they think of China, think of like rural, like low to, and I'm like, no, they had really high-speed internet way before we had it. And I remember there was this man who was literally moving rocks, like that was his work, and he had like 2 cell phones, and I was like, what is going on? Like, this is just not, the expectation of what you would think that would be happening
Shanghai
there.
is just a beast. It's like New York times 100. With the subway system or the metro system there, it's just different to have that experience internationally, to see what they have as infrastructure as far as public transportation, because here in the U.S., like, public transportation is something that isn't really common compared to other countries, especially in Asia.
Yeah.
So just seeing kind of the transition from having someplace that's kind of the stigma of being out there is this old traditional China, Beijing. You think of the Pearl Tower. The Pearl Tower is kind of the new that brought to Shanghai, but the traditional and new, the technology and the advancements that are just out there, and it's also a melting pot. I mean, you can go out there and not know any Chinese at all and speak full English, because there's so many expats and foreigners out there. Yeah,
there were times I literally would look around, and I think if you took a picture of this, you would not know you were in China. Like you could be in New York, you could be almost any big international city or American city that was, had a metropolitan area. And then I lived in the French concession. So for those who aren't familiar with Shanghai, or Shanghai as the locals would say it, I still sometimes say Shanghai, but they have these concessions which were from the Opium Wars in different countries like France and Germany, and the British got parts of town that were basically like their own law. And so the French concession, literally they have these tree-lined boulevards, and it does feel very French in a lot of areas. So it's just really a fascinating place. There's really nowhere like Shanghai.
No, there's not. I mean, the mix of traditional, international, and new age is something that's unmatched in any other city.
So what year were you out in Shanghai?
So I was in Shanghai August 17 I came back here to Vegas in December of 17, and then I went back there after a trip to the Winter Olympics in Korea. So this was probably in February. I went back in February and was there till May. So
nice.
It's a good stint.
Yeah, I did go briefly to Korea on a business, or like flying back, and it was like the flight was through Korea, and I was like, well, I might as well. So I went to Seoul for a little bit. So yeah, it's really cool. And I have to say, I was hoping to go back to China for the first time since I lived there. And I lived there in 2010.
Yep.
And last year, which obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, with COVID and everything. So yeah, I love talking about it because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about China and what it's like to really be there. And for one thing, I was really surprised with how capitalist it felt.
Yeah.
And I know it is communist, and there's certainly elements of society that way, but it really feels like a capitalist country in a lot of ways when you're there. And one of the things that cracked me up, and I don't know if it was still like that when you were there, but Facebook is banned, right? So
Yes.
Facebook is banned,
Yeah.
Google's banned, like all these websites that we're used to using are banned. But the expats have all these workarounds. So you'd go to like a bar, and they'd literally have postcards. They'd be like, "Find us on Facebook."
Yeah.
It was so kind of ridiculous, actually.
Yeah, so they all have social medias out there. All those businesses that you go to, the bars, the restaurants, they're all on Facebook and Instagram, even though it's owned by Facebook. And then these platforms are also like Google-based. So Google and Facebook, as you said, is banned out in China. They have their own versions of it through the conglomerate companies that they have, the beasts of Alibaba, of Tencent, of ByteDance.
Youku,
yeah. So you do have to go out there and get a VPN just to get on these platforms that we are so comfortable with here in the States. But once you get that VPN, it's basically just fair game. So
yeah, that's one of the things that just made me laugh is how this dichotomy of like it's banned and everyone's using it.
Yeah. So, yeah, that kind of social media is still around out there. Everybody uses it. They just have to find a different route to get to it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So anyway, when things are open up again enough to travel, I do recommend checking it out. I would like to go back. And I actually never went to Hong Kong, so that's on my list to go. I didn't go to Hong Kong, and I'd like to explore Japan more because I only went to Tokyo. And so there's a lot.
And then you mentioned Seoul. Like, I was there in Seoul for a good week for being at the Olympics for a month. And so before I went to the Olympics in Pyeongchang in 2018, the first stop was staying out in Seoul and making sure you get all your paperwork and registration and I just wanted to check out the city for a few days. So before and after the Olympics in 2018, I was in Seoul, and that's one of my favorite cities out there in Asia.
Beautiful city, really beautiful. I really didn't know much about it before going, but it was literally like my flight's going there. I might as well stay for a few days and check it out. And I'm really glad that I did, and I enjoyed it a lot. And it is a place I'd like to go back. So, did you become fluent in Chinese and Mandarin when you were out there?
Not even close.
It's a really difficult language.
So the problem with the problem with my studies there is because it's so hard to learn that language.
It's really, I'm good with languages, and it is hard.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
I will admit, like during my college, you have to really put just like everything else, learning something new, you have to really put the 100% effort into it, or 200% effort into it. And that's something that I wasn't really interested in. So, like, yes, of course, it was my major, and I had to get through it, and I found, like, I learned enough to get through it and pass tests and stuff like that. But getting out there, and the problem with us is when I went out there to study, we're in the dorms with all expats, we're in classes with all expats, so we didn't really have any interaction besides just the Chinese class. But even in a Chinese class, we had the Chinese teacher, and then we also had expat students. Yeah. So we were so used to speaking English together that we didn't really put the effort to learn the Chinese, and we all went out together. So as far as cultural inclusion and like being immersed, or cultural immersion, being immersed in the culture, like we didn't do that part of learning the language. We just had fun and were in classes together and spoke English and just went around and explored an amazing city. So.
One of the things that I found really fascinating is that what would tend to happen is that you'd have people from all over the world there, and the sort of the closest thing you'd have to universal language that most of the people were likely to speak was English. Yep. So you'd end up having these conversations where some people were speaking German, some people are, speaking Mandarin or other language, and then there'd be this kind of English conversation happening. Yeah. There was this one conversation that made me laugh. It was these two Germans that each ran factories, and one of them, I think, was in Pakistan, and another one was in China. The factories, and the whole conversation was happening in English until they both got so passionate and were upset with the other one that they switched to German, and then we're just yelling at each other in German about factory working conditions and the complexities of the question of what was the best situation ethically. But yeah, so you really could get by, at least within expat communities, without learning or speaking Mandarin. But I found dealing with locals, that wasn't the case, at least when I was there. So there were still, most people didn't speak English.
That's true, yeah. So with the locals, I mean, you kind of had to know people in China respect people, of course, that try their language and try to learn it and try to understand it. And that I had enough of a basic knowledge to be able to put some words together and put sentences together. I don't know if my teachers want to hear this, but... So yeah, I was able to put some sentences together and have some sort of normal or basic conversation. And that's what they appreciated. Like, they would actually help you out if you tried to speak it.
Yeah.
And so that was cool. It's talking with locals that way.
Yeah, the situation with me is that I was in government and politics and worked in higher education during the recession, and then I had a contract position at University of Washington that ended.
Yep.
And I looked for months for a job and couldn't find anything, and then I was like, maybe I'll just go teach English in China. At least I can get a job doing that. So I got my TEFL certificate, and I just went over there. And so I took literally, I studied Mandarin for 6 weeks before I went over there, and then I got there, and everyone I worked with spoke English, and then my social circle spoke English. So basically, for me, I was trying to use Mandarin for shopping or taxis and things like that. And definitely had some adventures with that. But yeah, it's helpful to learn. It's also a very difficult language. So anyone who has any kind of grasp of Chinese and Mandarin specifically, I'm good for you. It's really hard.
Thank you.
So that's really awesome that you had that experience. So yeah, let's talk about NFTs and collectibles. And for those who aren't familiar with NFTs, it stands for non-fungible token, which is a very long word, so no wonder everyone calls it NFT for short. And it has a lot of different applications that have to do with intellectual property and basically digital assets. So I'd love to hear your story in terms of first, how did you hear about NFTs?
Yep.
It's still a fairly new thing.
It is a fairly new thing. It's a very new thing, part of Web3, which is kind of this whole new technology revolution is what I think it is, what a lot of people think it is. And it's kind of the new version of the internet that we had. The internet boom, the internet bubble we had 20 years ago, where everybody was starting out these companies and nobody knew what was going on, but people saw an opportunity there. So non-fungible tokens is a digital collectible. It's an asset that's on the blockchain technology, so it's always tracked, and it's non-fungible because it's always a one of one. No matter, even if they can do multiple editions of the same
series,
file.
But there's still only one of that.
There's still one of one because there's a serial code that's on the blockchain that's to every single one of those. So even if it's the same image, they can all have this different serial number.
Right.
So that makes it non-fungible. So it's been a super interesting industry to be a part of. I got into it around January, February when it was really starting to boom for 2021. I know there's people that have been in it a few years before where, this whole crypto...
That was really unheard of then.
Yeah, it was.
Because I'm fairly tech savvy and I only started hearing about it this year.
Yeah. So this year was kind of the blowout of it. It came out and it made its mark on whatever industry it is. There's so many opportunities in the space, and because it's so young, there's those opportunities to create something new that really hasn't been done before.
Right.
So every day you see something that really, that hasn't been done before, and people are capitalizing off of that, of course. But also, it's the opportunity to share those stories of these brands, these athletes, these influencers, these companies, organizations. That's what they're here to do, is to connect with their audience in a way, provide value for others. And non-fungible tokens, NFTs, is just a way to do that. It's creating another whole asset to be able to monetize off of, but also create experiences with.
Yeah, I think there's so many different applications for this, and already there's a lot, music, podcasting, collectibles for sports, and art design. There's just so many.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be a whole bunch more that we probably haven't even thought of yet because it's such a new area. Here's something that I realized the other day. So I taught a class on crypto and blockchain, and there was a brief part of the class that was on NFTs, just to help people know what it is, just generally plant the idea. And I realized that So my audience tends to be like creative, intuitive people, not necessarily super tech. So literally no one in the class had heard of an NFT.
Yeah.
And we're trying hard to understand it. And I realized that the best time to get into something is when no one has heard about it.
Yep.
Because that's when there's the most opportunity for growth. And that's what happened. I started podcasting 10 years ago. And that's exactly what happened. Like, I would say I'm a podcaster, and everyone would say, "What's a podcast?" And now, I mean, look, it's like everywhere. So yeah, now if you've heard of it but you haven't explored, like, start exploring. That's what I'm getting.
Get into it, learn about it, get into the community, because it's such a niche community right now. But one thing that you just mentioned is, if you haven't heard about it, just start getting into it somehow. And it's something that people are still laughing at because they're not used to it. It's such a new concept. But there was the one, I know the biggest example right now that made all headlines is Beeple. So, so Beeple did the $69 million NFT, which is the highest NFT sold right now. But the person that bought it, his name's Meta Coven, and he's just super passionate. He's in his early 30s. He's super passionate about blockchain and crypto. And I saw an interview on him once, and he said that, well, this was after buying it. He said, I got into crypto and blockchain because it was something that people were laughing at. And when people are laughing at that kind of thing, it's just something that they're not used to or not aware of and just not as educated in. So he just said, those are the things that I want to try, are the things that people laugh at, because there's an opportunity there to do something with that and to learn more about it, and to figure it out in a way that creates a sustainable living.
I completely agree. I mean, I just had that realization that the tendency is, I don't know about that, I'm going to avoid that.
Yeah.
But actually, there's the most room for growth, and then you're primed to be in a good position when it does explode. And this has happened, especially technologically, but it also happens with ideas, you know. So this is with, buying things online and, just the web as a whole, then crypto, and now, this new blockchain application, which is NFTs. So figure it out. And I just want to share this story because I intuitively got to invest in Bitcoin and check it out early on, 2011, 2012. And I just, at that point, I didn't have anyone in my circle that I knew that I could ask about it. And it's so much more developed now. It's so much easier to there's Coinbase or Robinhood where you can literally just put in your credit card or your bank and buy some, and it's not that big of a deal. Anyone can do it really, as long as you have a bank account. And at that point it was harder, and I'm just oh my God, why didn't I just find someone and just figure it out, because if I had, I would just say I'd have a lot more money than I have now.
It wasn't crypto that got me into crypto. It was NFTs, because I come from my passion is collecting things.
Yeah.
I've been an athlete my whole life. I've collected autographs. I've collected tickets for every game I've been to. I've collected baseball cards, basketball cards, Pokemon cards. I've collected every single greeting card that I've been given since, for birthday, Christmas, graduation. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I counted. I have over 55 greeting cards in my room, just stacked. And because why throw it away? I mean, people just take that cash out, and just throw the card away. But that card is something that somebody took the time to give to. Of course, they love or respect you or have some sort of care for you to give that to you.
Right.
And so it has that story, and you're never going to get something like that again, because it's a one of one. It's somebody wrote that message for you for that day. And reading back at those, reading back at ones that were from 10, 15 years ago is something that's awesome to just look at and see, okay, what year it was, who it came from, and what it says on there. So that's something that I've just collected my whole life. But if you go in my room, it's a hall of fame of baseball memorabilia, sports memorabilia from the Super Bowl, the Olympics, all-star games. So, and spring training. We used to go to spring training baseball as a family every year. And our whole game as kids was the autograph game. Right. So we'd collect the ball, we'd find balls to go get signed. We'd bring a whole bunch to go get signed. And that's how, there was a competition to see whose autograph we could get. Right. And this is all just organic. So that whole notion of collecting is what kept that passion for me to get into NFTs, because it was just taking that same concept of buying, trading, and selling, or just collecting and holding on to things, and taking it digitally, which is moving into this new frontier of digital collectibles. So NFTs is basically just taking the card concepts of, like, say, opening up a pack physically and not knowing what you get in, and taking that digitally. So NBA Top Shot is a big example. They've made over 800 million since October, and their company is now worth over 3 billion. Dapper Labs, that's based out of Vancouver, Canada. And so NBA Top Shot is a huge example of that. All they did was take 10-second highlights of a basketball game. Say like a superstar shoots a three-pointer. They're taking that 10-second highlight of that superstar and make it into a card of that player. And so they did that with thousands of editions and created a whole business model out of it. And now they're one of the most successful stories in the world of NFTs, and pretty much brought the sports industry into NFTs.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And anything where there's like a strong fan culture.
Yeah.
Kind of culture, obviously comics, film, Star Wars, all these kinds of things. I think there's a huge opportunity that is just like literally scratching the surface on these things. And it's funny because I've been trying to explain some of these things to people who are totally new, haven't heard about this, and are not collectors like you. And a lot of people don't understand, like the Beeple thing. You can watch a lot of that on YouTube, but it's like, but you don't own it. Like you don't have the rights, it's not yours. And so that's the big thing. And I think we are moving into more and more of a digital space where people have less physical stuff, fewer physical blind. And I went through my phase. I'm not that way now, but I was definitely like a digital nomad for a while, where I still liked my books and my things, but it was all digital.
Yeah.
So I think this transition really makes a lot of sense because people still have things that are important to them. They want them, but not to have to like take those things with you everywhere you go is very appealing at the same time.
Yeah, and the main question that comes from it is, why would I want a PNG of something? Like, I can just copy and paste that from the internet. But why would I want a PNG or a collectible like this when, I could just go take that image or whatever, screenshot it, and it's more that it has a story behind it of who the original creator is. Could it be a brand, an athlete, an influencer, an event, or organization? So it always tracks back to who that original creator is. And that's their asset. Like that, it can be tracked to say that it's authentic. It's their address it came from. But also the second tier that comes from that, from holding that, is the experience or unlockables that come from it. So the ones that are doing good in this space, the projects, are the ones that create more than just having a video that you can collect or a PNG. There's a second degree of it for the experience and unlockables. So say the NFT, if you buy that, comes with a t-shirt, or it comes with a physical item of that collectible, or it could be an experience, like an event ticket. So in sports and entertainment, that's a huge part of this industry that's going in. I know Mark Cuban has mentioned a bunch of times that the Dallas Mavericks will have NFTs that are tickets. So you buy the NFT, that's your collectible item, but then you can also go to the front gate of that arena and scan it in to be a ticket. Or if a music artist would do something, so they would release 50 collectibles as digital NFTs, and people would collect them, and those would be probably loyal fans that are interested in their music, that have been collecting things for their from their career, like throughout. So albums or posters, or they came out with merchandise or stuffed animals. They have those items because they've been collecting them. But that artist could say, hey, I'm going to be in Vegas, I'm at this venue. If you have that NFT, you could trade that in, or not trade it in, but you could scan it in to be there. And only those NFT holders could get into that event. So you could create this whole experiential part. I know Gary Vee is one of the biggest examples in this space.
So for those who aren't familiar with Gary Vee, he's a very well-known podcaster and successful podcaster.
So Gary Vee, what he did is, of course, he has a huge audience, and he helps a lot of people with everything, podcasts, with providing value for others in entrepreneurship. And so he has a big following, of course. And what he did with NFTs is he created 10,000 NFTs, which are all characters that kind of go by what he believes in. So, and he paired them all to the same letters. Like, so it was like kind koala, and I don't know what the other ones are, but it was definitely catchy. It was hand drawn, and he released 10,000 of them, and they are tickets for his conference. He's calling it VCon. So for the next 4 years, those people that have those NFTs get an automatic ticket into his conference. No other people can go in. It's only those NFT holders. And he did it to where he has a different tiered, to where there's a VIP, there's GA, there's meet and greet, there's breakfast with Gary. There's all these different tiers of the conference that were priced out differently and priced accordingly. Of course, VIP being more than GA. But people were buying those at 100 to anywhere between $100 and $500, and they bought multiple. And now they're flipping for like the floor price is like 10 to 15 grand for one of those.
It's really fascinating to think about what the growth area. And I'm thinking about this as a content creator myself for several areas. So I'm an author. I have 8 books, and I remember when I started writing, I thought, okay, like, I love reading digitally. Like, personally, I like that experience because I love having my whole library on, like, my phone or my Kindle or whatever. And, like, this was a big deal when I moved to China because I love to read. And English books were expensive and hard to find, and they didn't have a good selection. You know? I mean, understandably, you're in a foreign country. Like, it's not easy to get them there. And so that's when I started really reading digitally, but I loved it. But you couldn't at that point get like a signed author copy or a limited edition hardbound digital version, you know. But that's basically what is the opportunity here is that authors can create these, you know, specialty editions or something, limited number. They could digitally sign it or something, the actual, you know, digital book, and then also in terms of services. And so I look back at, you know, so I'm most known as a psychic, and I'm gradually expanding into other areas that I'm known for. But when I started as a psychic 10 years ago, my hourly rate was like, say, $50 to $60. Well, now it's $1,000. And so I could make an NFT that's like good for reading every year. And like, I bet you it will go up a lot in value in 10 years. And for those who don't know NFTs, one of the things you can do is you can actually build in the contract so that the creator of the NFT gets like a commission every time.
They get a royalty.
Royalty or commission.
There's a royalty that's baked into the contract from the original contract. So the creator can sell it from the creator to the second to the buyer.
Right.
And so they of course get that full cut from there because it's that direct transaction. But then from the second to the third to fourth, 99 to 100. The original creator gets a royalty, which is whatever they set on the contract. So it could go however many levels, exponential. Like you could start with something that's $1. Somebody could sell it for $5. The next person could sell it for $10. If you keep going up, and that original creator still gets the royalty from it because it's on the blockchain technology.
So Drew, I know that you have started a company called Collar. Can you tell us a little bit more about the company and what you guys offer?
Yeah, so I started Collar, which is a passion-driven brand in collectibles. So I wanted to tell stories and create experiences through physical and digital collectibles. So we help brands, influencers, athletes, events and organizations get into the collectible space in NFTs and doing campaigns with their physical assets or experiences.
I think the experiences aspect is so cool, and that's honestly part of what got me really excited about opportunities and potentials for myself and for those that I work with. So when you work with people, how do you typically structure that? Do you have a fee? Is it a percentage? Like, what's your structure?
Yeah, so right now I've been doing it more on the consultancy side. So they're bringing me to kind of be the expert in the space and I want to be that producer of the campaign. So I say, these are the kind of collectibles we should have. We should have physical or experiences that you have as assets, as a brand. And then also this is the NFT story that we're showing. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think if you don't know how to do it, then just find someone who does. Don't wait. And this is what I did with Bitcoin, is I was like, well, it's too much. It's confusing. I'll just wait. And then I missed a lot of opportunity because of that. So I think I've learned my lesson this time. And even when it's confusing and I feel like I hit a roadblock or an obstacle, I know it's just worth it to just figure it out or find someone who does and then figure it out that way.
Yep.
And also, you don't have to always do all the aspects of something, so it's good to work with people, and you can DIY everything, but it's a longer and slower and hard and more difficult road.
So with every campaign, I want to have a digital collectible, NFT, but also have physical or experiences tied to that.
I think that's going to be the area that just kind of blows people's minds in terms of what's possible, and that you're going to start to have these NFTs that are really expensive. And just a caveat, because I meant to mention it when we talked about Beeple. So that's the highest paid NFT so far, the most expensive so far, 69 million. And just to give people some context of like the market for NFTs, previously in October, like his most expensive art sale had been $100 for physical art. So it's a massive like increase.
And it's not like Beeple just came out of nowhere. Beeple was a well-known artist, but not as well-known as he is now, because he's one of the pioneers of NFTs and this whole NFT industry and movement. But he was a well-known artist, and that piece was an art piece called Dailies. So every day for 5,000 days, he did an art piece.
Yeah.
And he started to teach himself. So at the beginning, they were like super elementary, because he taught himself every single day how to do this and how to get better as an artist. So he's been an artist for however many years, 20 years. He's been an artist his whole life. And so this was not just, it's a quick win. This was something that
he worked for a long time. Still, I think it's amazing to go from like making, physical art pieces for $100, and then it's like, and here's 169 million. Mm-hmm. It's pretty, incredible escalation.
Yeah, so the projects I've launched, my first one was Vegas-based. So I'm from here, I'm from Vegas. I grew up playing high school baseball out here, playing club baseball. So like growing up here in Vegas, I was very fortunate to have a sports background and be able to play these sports. And so on May 15th, which is the anniversary of the city of Las Vegas, so I think this year...
On May which date?
May 15th.
May 15th, okay.
Yeah, so May 15th is the anniversary of Las Vegas. So that's when I launched my first campaign, and I did it Vegas style. So, and of course, one of the big things that's out here is the Vegas Golden Knights. So the hockey team is a huge,
we're in the podcast studio for where I live, and underneath there's a restaurant bar, and it is the Vegas Knights. Like that's the theme of the of the bar.
So I wanted to do a camp because this was going to be a big year for them. They had a great season, and I wanted to do a campaign to send kids to the playoff games that have never been to a game before. Because I've been to the Olympics opening ceremonies, I've been to MLB All-Star games, NBA All-Star, NBA Finals. I've been to some of the most well-known baseball stadiums around the world. And so these events that I've been very fortunate to go to either as a family or in my professional career. And I know there's kids out there that haven't had that opportunity before. So I wanted to create my first NFT campaign to send kids that have never been to the games. So my goal was 21, because it's 2021. And Vegas, is all about the number 21. So
I never thought about it, but you're right.
It's blackjack, it's 777, and so I thought
being 21 to gamble. There's a lot of
21 is a
drink as well.
So 21 resonates with Vegas, and so the campaign is called 21 is Golden, and so that was the goal, was to send 21 kids to their first ever game during playoffs, and those tickets were extremely hard to get because it's the hottest ticket here in Vegas, no pun intended. And it's playoffs. Those tickets were, the floor price there was $100 at least.
Right.
And I had to figure out how to get them at cost and how to buy them off people and how to find season ticket holders. And I just basically bought everything out of pocket. I gave every kid a gold jersey, and that was costly as well. So that was my first NFT campaign. Is I had a set of NFTs to sell to raise money for that. And so because they made it from that, and now I'll always be able to say that was my first NFT campaign. And since then, I've done an Olympic qualifying basketball tournament up in Canada. I've worked with an NBA player who's a good friend of mine, who we're doing a fundraiser for his home islands of St. Vincent. in the Grenadines who just had a volcano a few months ago.
I had a client who was trying to get out to Barbados and she got stranded, and it was like really crazy.
Yeah, and then another one is I just flew down to Miami for Bitcoin 2021 because that was the biggest conference.
It's massive
in the space. And it was just people were so hungry to get, because we just got back from or not got done, but we've been through a pandemic and events have just been shut down. People were so hungry to get that social interaction and just be at a conference.
Right.
So I just said a week before, I'm flying down to Miami and I'm going down there I was down there for 36 hours. I landed at 7 a.m. and I was gone the next day at 7 p.m. But 4 days before, I said, I want to have an event down there. I don't want to just go down there and network. Like, I want to host an event. So I said, instead of having, because all the events linked to the conference were like that VIP bottle service, go out to the club, dance, drink, party, and all that. And nothing against that, because it's a good environment for just being at a conference all day and wanted to just have fun and be in a social networking area. But I wanted to host a beach cleanup. And so
that's awesome.
So
I definitely can get behind that.
And of course, because crypto gets bashed, or there's a lot of people that go against crypto because of the environmental.
Totally.
So since Bitcoin 2021 was in town, I said, let's host a crypto cleanup, which is the first crypto cleanup ever. I haven't seen it anywhere else. And I hit up a local foundation out there called Clean Miami Beach, who is an amazing foundation. I didn't know them before, but 4 days before the event, I said, hey, let's host a beach cleanup on Saturday. And we're going to call it the Crypto Cleanup. We don't know how many people are going to show up, but we're just going to do it. And they said, okay, thankfully. And I can't believe they said that, because I was a complete stranger to them. And I said, I'm coming in town for the Bitcoin 2021. We're going to have the Crypto Cleanup. And we're going to do NFTs in the future inspired by ocean plastic waste. Because they make art out of the microplastics that they create off the beach.
That's so cool. I love that.
They do art like murals, and they actually have physical sculptures of like fish and ocean animals, like marine animals that are made by ocean plastics, like glued onto a canvas.
Yeah.
So I said, let's create NFTs out of that. So we ended up having that event. We hosted a run as well. So like a 1K run, because it was World Oceans Week. So Adidas was doing a campaign.
I like 1K. That's manageable.
Yeah. So Adidas was doing a campaign called Run for the Oceans. Yeah. And they donated, for every 1K tracked on their app, they would donate towards collecting plastics out of the ocean to create uniforms and shoes. So that was the same week as that. So I said, let's host a beach cleanup and a 1K. And we had 45 people show up, and we collected 148 pounds of trash. And we created a whale.
That's a lot,
So we created a whale on the sand out of all the trash collected, just to have a memento from that, because one of the nicknames in the crypto space right now is the whales. So the whales are the people that, of course, have the money, have the investment, and come and just eat everything up. So the whales eat all the NFTs up, and so that was just something that just tied to the theme of crypto and NFTs, and we created that whale and had the first crypto cleanup there on South Beach.
That's awesome. I think that's great, and I'm glad that you're addressing that. It makes me sad how everyone just kind of thinks, or not everyone. There are certain individuals who think crypto's bad, anything in the blockchain's bad because it uses a lot of energy, it's bad for the environment, and therefore we need to just not do that. And I'm like, okay, well, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. We need to change some of the ways that we're operating here, but I think ultimately it's still a good technology. We just need to modify some things, make sure we're doing it responsibly.
And there are new blockchains that are coming out, or not new, but they've been around, that are more environmentally friendly. Like Polygon is on a Matic network, and they're actually doing NFTs on that platform that is environmentally friendly. It's not as adopted yet as, say, Ethereum, but it is on its way up. And there's so many different chains and coins out there now that it's just getting crazy, of course. But the overall opportunity that we see here is doing something that's, of course, environmentally friendly in a technology that's taking a lot of energy, but also sticking, like my theme that I always stick to is NFTs for good. Like, how can you do it to where it's not just a money grab that a lot of people think it is? And I mean, I don't want to use that nickname to say that a lot of them are, but there's some out there, or no, there's more opportunity to do something with NFTs because it's a new asset now to do some sort of give back or have some sort of story to it that actually fulfills, like, that has something and like has a good social impact to it.
No, that's wonderful to hear, and I love how you've been doing that, and that it's a way to build partnerships and relationships. So, is creating NFTs and helping people create them, is that something that you do right now, or you're more just creating your own NFTs for things that you're passionate about?
Yeah, so I have been getting as far as I can into the space because I just love the community and love, of course, helping more people get into it and learning more about it and seeing how they can create their own projects. I actually launched a campaign to where I'm sending, called the Logo NFT, where I'm sending out free NFTs to anybody that wants to get started, or like even if they've already been started. I'm sending out 1,084 Collar Logo NFTs. So that's all on my website. It's collar.co. So it's COLLR.co. And just I also have information on there about how to get into NFTs and how to start out. But with that one, I wanted to just kind of reward our first 1,000 collectors. So I'm giving out the original logo, and that'll of course have giveaways later on, like when I start to do more projects. But also the 4 projects I've done, I created a collar logo with those colors, and so there's 21 of each of those logo NFTs that are on the certain projects that I've done, and so one of 21 will get a giveaway of an NFT from that project.
That's awesome. So I'm curious, as I would say you're kind of an NFT maven early on in the game compared to some people. So is there a particular NFT platform that you like or prefer? I mean, OpenSea, I think, is the one that's probably the most popular, at least from the people that I've talked with. But I know there's so many. So any guidance or suggestions on NFT platforms?
Yeah, so OpenSea is kind of the common one that a lot of people are on. I've also been trying out niche marketplaces. The first one I launched the Vegas campaign on, the 21 is Golden, was on NiftyKit. And so because this industry is so young, and so are these teams, these brands that are these marketplaces that are creating their brands. So I was able to connect with their team and kind of build a relationship with them to where it's been such an awesome marketplace to work with. Like NiftyKit's been so supportive of people that are just getting into NFTs and kind of helping them that way. And then they've kind of done it differently than a lot of others. They're letting you white label it. They're giving you
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really neat.
So you can it's basically you're creating a collection, and you can take that domain and put it on your own domain and embed it into your website. So at that point, they're basically just the payment processors for just like anybody that has inventory or a shop on their site. They're just the payment process. They're just the Stripe. They're the Shopify.
And can you pay through them with a debit card, credit card, or a bank, or do you have to use crypto?
Nope. So
see, I think that's a big deal, because I think that's a pain point for a lot of people, especially that maybe are interested in this, but they're not that tech savvy yet with crypto and don't have it, or don't know how to, or like I tried to buy one on OpenSea, and even just the gas prices, and I was like, oh, for those who don't know, gas is like the sort of the cost for the crypto. In this case, it was Ethereum. It varies depending on the time and the demand and everything. And I remember I was trying to buy an NFT that was $20, and then by the time you got the fees and the gas, it was like $36. So like almost double.
So I've seen a couple months ago, actually, those examples were way crazier with gas fees. So,
yeah, I mean, I know it goes up and down. And this was when was this? I think this was in June. So it was a little bit ago.
Back in March, like when I was first trying out minting. So minting is basically just putting your NFT up on the blockchain. So when I was first minting NFTs, it was like $100 to put up each NFT, because you had to pay the gas fee, and the gas fee was like $100.
Right.
And I also went on some of these platforms and marketplaces to try and buy NFTs.
Same thing. It's really expensive.
Yeah. So to buy and sell, you have to pay these gas fees, which are the transaction fees. So there was a $6 piece that I wanted to buy just to get in, just to see how it was. That piece it costed $100 in gas. So it was $106 to buy that collectible. And so that's something that I was like, that turned me off right away.
It stopped me from, I was literally wanting to buy just to support my friend who had created the NFT. But then it was really challenging, and it couldn't, I couldn't get my wallet to sync up with it easily. It was not into it. So anyway, it's still that kind of clunky phase on certain platforms, and you have these issues that come up. Yeah,
so that's common now. Gas, and of course, is getting way better. Like now it's between $5 and $50, which is kind of like a standard or an average, which is still crazy for somebody to think of paying that kind of fee for a collectible that they're buying. But it's something that's common in the industry. Of course, it's something to get through, but a lot of these new chains and marketplaces are now combating against that, to where some of them are feeless and they keep it all internally on their own marketplace. So you can buy collectibles with called lazy minting, and OpenSea also does that as well. So Block Party is another marketplace that I've used, and they do lazy minting, to where you can buy that collectible and there's no fees involved. And you would have to if you wanted to keep it in your OpenSea wallet or MetaMask, which is the common wallet.
Yeah, I think MetaMask is probably the one that if you don't have one, get MetaMask.
Yeah.
Not advice. I'm just saying this is the one that's you know very common.
So MetaMask is the common one, but so a lot of these marketplaces and chains are coming up with either their own coins or launching on a new chain that has no fees or has lower fees. Polygon is one that's coming up with that's not coming up. They've been out there, just not as adopted as Ethereum, but they have no fees, or basically very little fees. Like that's why I'm able to send 1,000 NFTs for free, is because those fees are like less than pennies to send each NFT.
Which, when I was dealing with that issue with the gas, and how expensive it was, I thought, God, that's so fascinating to me, because one of the whole principles of crypto and blockchain was that the fees are small in theory. But there's also kind of growth pains, I think, with some of these things, and figuring out how do we do this in a way that works for everybody as well.
So it's definitely a crazy industry to from afar. Not from afar, but trying to explain that to somebody that hasn't been in the space at all, and just hear the words that I'm saying and how many steps there are, it's definitely difficult. I'm looking at it right now and saying, okay, there's so many things that the people have been in the industry have been learning about. There's so many different pillars that are a part of this. There's the community, which is on Discord, which is on Twitter, which is on Clubhouse. So those are the three kind of social platforms that everybody's on. But also learning about wallets and getting Ethereum into your wallet and having a MetaMask and setting that up and knowing about gas fees. And there's a long list of things that everybody that has been in the space has gotten used to. But then just explaining that to somebody new, somebody that hasn't been in the space that is interested, is it kind of turns them off in a way. It's this is so much to learn. But I'm telling you, it's not as scary once you start to figure it all out, of course. And there's a lot of benefits to being a part of it at this stage, at where it's at, especially NFTs. I know people have been in blockchain and crypto for 7 or 8 years, but now the NFT space is probably only 2.5 years old, 3 years old, and that's it. But 2021 was the NFT boom.
It was all of a sudden it kind of popped to a degree. Yeah, I think that it's definitely the time, and when it's the hardest in ways, is I said, I think that's when you can have the most benefit in a lot of different ways by getting in. And in regards to NFTs, not only is this new, so it's a great time in terms of the opportunity, but also I personally really like this sort of culture of NFTs. So within the sort of blockchain, crypto, and now NFT space, there's a lot of subcultures.
Yeah.
And NFTs tend to draw creatives. Well, I'm a creative, so it makes sense. In, for example, some of the more kind of techie nerd on the really coding and things like that tends to draw a different type of person than I am. I mean, I'm always an early tech advocate and user, but I'm not going to go in and program stuff. So for me, NFTs are it makes sense. It's kind of I really feel I fit in with NFT
Yeah,
enthusiasts.
and then you just hear people talking about being in this space, and what's coming out now is what's called these generative projects. So these generative avatar projects. So what they are, if you were to look some of them up, you've probably been seeing them in the headlines now, because there's been headlines all year about what's going on with these projects. And there's what's called CryptoPunks, which is,
Those are some of the most popular NFTs. Yeah, describe them. They're funny, actually. It's kind of amazing how much they're going for.
So CryptoPunks are these 10,000 avatar projects that are pixel art of basically just
punks.
Yeah, punks. They're just punks.
Old school looking punks.
Yep, they are. I mean, so what they do is they create 10,000 of these characters that are all computer generated, and they're they're one of ones. So 10,000 one of ones, and actually CryptoPunks, they gave them out for free, and now they've been like this.
Now
week,
they've been sold for massive amounts of money.
This week, there's been a few that have been a couple million, 1 million, 500,000. And they were giving those out for free a few years ago.
That's amazing. It's always like these companies are trying to get the adoption and or the airdrops of crypto, and like you have people that have these massive things that they didn't even have to pay for.
Yeah, so what these projects do is they sell, it's basically kind of crowdfunding for whatever it is that they're working on long term. But they have 10,000 of these one-of-one characters. They all have a different hat, different eyes, different ears, different mouth, different shirt, different background. There's not one that is the same. Another project is called Bored Ape Yacht Club, which has made probably over 50 million in this year. And people are so FOMO'd into not getting into that 10,000 that they're spending 25 to 30 grand on one character just to get into that membership. Because what they did is created this membership of sending NFTs or sending collectible items just for the people that are part of it. And so now these every single day there's like 10 projects jumping out. There are these 10,000 avatar projects. They're one of one. They all have different qualities, different traits, different rarities, and people are just wanting them to sell out right away because they think it's an investment. So I bought into one the other day called Rumble Kong League. And what they are is a 3-on-3 basketball video game. Each character is a character in the game. So each NFT is a character in the game. So you can buy one and team up with other people, or you can buy 3 and have your own team. And so they're developing a video game that will be in these metaverses, in these virtual universes. And it's basically, think of it like these games that are out there now, these sports games, these Fortnite, these... NBA 2K, think of just a video game, but pretty much NFTs are the characters. NFTs are also the wearables that are inside there. So I bought into that project the other day, and it was at 50%. And I bought it at, the piece was $200, the NFT. Mm-hmm. And it was at 50% sold that day. So they sold 5,000, and this was 3 days after the launch. Later that night, it sold out. Like the whole project sold out. They sold 10,000. And the floor price is what it's called. So the lowest price to get in the secondary market and to just get one of them after they've all been sold, that's called the floor price. So the floor price was so I bought it at 0.08 ETH, which was around $200. The floor price later that night was 0.16, so double. So $450.
You look at the potential room for growth. Now, a lot of these things are volatile, and we don't know super long term. But at the same time, it's just the potential for profit at the rates of profit are unheard of in a lot of other industries. Yeah. So again, I definitely think it's important to explore, do research, check out, and this is an area that can feel overwhelming. So one of the best things I think is to connect with people. Go to meetups, take classes, go to conferences, events. And just talk to people. Yeah. I teach, it sounds like you do mentorship and you help people, but I just think it's so helpful to just do that, get in the room, and it starts to feel less intimidating when there's people that you're connecting with that know more about it than you do.
And going back to, say, the Gary Vee example, is people just look at that and say, oh yeah, it was Gary Vee just using his influence and monetizing off of his following. But it was way beyond just that. Gary Vee did months before. I'm sure you saw these videos, you saw these podcasts of him saying, how to go on MetaMask, how to put
Prepping
Ethereum
his
in your
audience.
wallet. Yes.
Yeah.
So how to get people into the space and learning more about it and going into other projects and trying them out before he launched his.
Yeah.
But he spent months before his drop, and then he made sure that he got everything right. He even had to delay it a couple times. And he came out and said, like, I'm sorry, guys, but I don't feel this is ready. Like, I want to put out something that's quality and not going to crash. And so that's what he did. He spent months before his drop, and now on the secondary market, it's going insane.
Yeah, so it's really exciting, and I think it's great. Thank you so much for sharing a lot of wonderful information, and I'd love to just ask, is there anything else you'd like to share that we haven't talked about?
Continue listening to Laura bring on these guests, and bring on guests like myself to speak about these kind of trends and speak about NFTs, speak about crypto, or anything that's going on in business right now. Of course, you're bringing on very quality guests, and I appreciate you having me on here. But yes, just learn about it. Listen up to the don't get caught into say some of the headlines that are going out there. Do your own research on it, and just find. This is definitely not financial advice. I'm not trying to hook everybody into it, but just. I mean, if it's something that you're interested in and something that you see value in later on, I mean, what's going on right now is the early stages, and just having a collectible that's in these first years of it is something that's going to have value later on in life, whether you want to just buy it and flip it now for a quick win, or buy it to hold and see what kind of value and experience is given to it, or given to you from it. So
I think you see that with lots of new things, and even with stocks. I remember, when I think it was Apple that came out and it was like $200 or everyone, or was it Facebook? But one of them, it was like, everyone was like, that's so expensive. And all these tech stocks have gone up so much. So yeah, do your own research, check it out. But there's one of the cool things about NFTs is there are some you can get into that are not like a lot of money, for the average person anyway. So it's nice in that way. And it's the same thing with some of the crypto. I mean, I got into Doge, and then it went up a lot, So there's a lot of room, and I think it's also just fun and it's interesting. So great to get in kind of on the ground floor and explore and check it out. Yeah, again, this is not financial advice. Please check with your financial advisor for any financial advice. But this is fun to talk about from the collectible perspective. Is also just this new tech that I think it behooves all of us when there's something new to figure it out, because I do feel that this is going to have a bigger and bigger role in society moving forward, because it's still so early. We don't even know all the applications yet. It's just literally being figured out as we go. Yep. Well, awesome, Drew. Thank you so much for talking with us today. If people want to learn more or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that? Yeah, so I'm on socials. Again, it's collar.co. So that's the website. That's also the Instagram as well. And then on Twitter, it's collar_co. So those are all our channels. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, send me a DM. If you're here in Vegas, come link up with us over at the NFT meetups that we do, the crypto meetups. And looking forward to connecting. Yeah, these are monthly meetups. They've just started not that long ago. And it's a nice group of people. And I like these kind of events where there's usually some kind of presentational element, and then people can just talk and network. And I think that's where you can meet a lot of great connections and also just learn from each other. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. Laura, thank you for having me. And thank you everybody for listening. If you'd like more information about me, you can go to my website, powershour.biz, on the coaching and tech side. And then on the creative side, it's laurapowers.net. You can find me on Instagram at laurapowers44, on Twitter at @laurapowers, and I'm also on Facebook. Thanks for your listening and for your support.